Cardiovascular sludge. The terrifying biological reality of a 90-day human hibernation begins with the aggressive, mathematical collapse of the cardiovascular system. The delicate pink human heart, engineered for constant kinetic rhythm, is violently forced to decelerate to a chilling 3 beats per minute. Because the biological engine is mathematically deprived of kinetic friction, the heavy human blood aggressively thickens into a dark, toxic physiological sludge. This terrifying stagnation completely violently violates the mathematical physics of human anatomy. The thickened biological fluid aggressively pools in the lower extremities, creating massive, highly lethal geometric blood clots. The circulatory system, designed to be a high-velocity oxygen delivery network, mathematically mutates into a stagnant, suffocating multiversal trap. The human host is entirely paralyzed in the stark, dark gray geometric silence, mathematically unaware that their own highly vital biological fluids are violently congealing, turning their internal plumbing into a heavy, fatal anatomical nightmare long before the winter actually ends. The biological vessel mathematically risks permanent cardiovascular extinction before it even wakes up.
The musculoskeletal atrophy. Without the constant, heavy kinetic friction of gravity and physical movement, the delicate biomechanical human chassis aggressively destroys itself. The 90-day geometric stasis violently commands the biological body to mathematically execute a terrifying phase of muscular cannibalism. The highly complex pink muscle fibers, denied their required daily kinetic stress, aggressively dissolve into useless dark gray biological waste. Concurrently, the rigid white skeletal mass mathematically loses its dense structural integrity, violently shedding vital calcium into the stagnant bloodstream. When the hibernation cycle mathematically ends, the fragile human host does not wake up refreshed. Instead, they violently realize their delicate geometric limbs are mathematically too weak to even lift their own biological weight off the stark white floor. The human vessel is aggressively reduced to a broken, atrophied physiological puppet, violently forced to mathematically rebuild its entire musculoskeletal architecture from absolute zero in a terrifying, heavy biomechanical agony every single year.
The metabolic cannibalism. To mathematically survive a quarter of a year in absolute geometric stasis, the human engine must violently locate massive amounts of internal biological fuel. The delicate pink digestive system is entirely shut down, meaning the body must aggressively turn inward, initiating a heavy, terrifying process of metabolic cannibalism. Once the superficial geometric fat stores are completely mathematically depleted, the starving biological vessel violently targets its own vital organs. The heavy internal survival algorithm aggressively strips essential proteins from the delicate pink liver, the kidneys, and eventually the highly complex neurological tissue of the brain itself. The sleeping human host is mathematically unaware that they are violently eating themselves alive in the chilling geometric silence. By the time the 90-day stasis aggressively concludes, a significant percentage of the fragile biological architecture has been permanently, violently erased, leaving behind a heavily compromised, mathematically decaying biomechanical shell barely clinging to the stark multiversal reality.
The apex vulnerability violently executes the moment the entire human species mathematically futs down in perfect, terrifying synchronization. For 90 days, the apex predator of the planet is aggressively plunged into a state of absolute physiological defenselessness. Billions of unconscious biological vessels are violently exposed on the stark geometric floor, entirely stripped of their evolutionary fight-or-flight response. Without the heavy kinetic ability to defend themselves, sleeping humans become mathematically vulnerable to extreme thermal fluctuations, aggressive structural collapses, and the unforgiving heavy kinetic physics of the natural world. The chilling geometric silence of the dead human cities violently invites aggressive biological scavengers to mathematically reclaim the concrete void. The fragile human species is aggressively reduced to highly vulnerable, static, geometric meat, completely paralyzed and mathematically incapable of executing even the simplest biological survival protocol against a violently indifferent, heavy multiversal environment.
The infrastructure collapse. The terrifying multiversal reality of a 90-day global biological stasis violently guarantees the absolute mathematical collapse of human engineering. Our highly complex, heavy geometric infrastructure, nuclear reactors, global power grids, and chemical facilities cannot mathematically survive a 3-month abandonment. The rigid white concrete and dark gray steel structures aggressively demand constant human kinetic maintenance.
Without the delicate pencil-drawn stickmen to mathematically regulate the pressure valves, heavy nuclear cores violently overheat, aggressively melting down into catastrophic geometric toxic zones. The global electrical grid mathematically flatlines, plunging the entire stark white geometric world into absolute chilling darkness. When the human species finally violently awakens from its biological slumber, they do not return to civilization. They mathematically wake up in a heavy, aggressive, post-apocalyptic geometric wasteland, violently forced to survive in a stark reality where all their technological dominance has mathematically and permanently burned to the ground.
The cognitive fragmentation. The deep psychological terror of human hibernation manifests entirely within the fragile pink biological brain. Losing 90 days of consciousness every single year means a massive 25% of the human lifespan is mathematically erased in the heavy, dark, geometric void. Waking up aggressively triggers a severe, terrifying cognitive dissociation. The delicate pink neurological tissue violently struggles to bridge the massive chronological gap in its episodic memory. The human consciousness becomes deeply, mathematically fragmented, aggressively trapped in a heavy, stuttering reality where linear time violently jumps forward without warning. The psychological host possesses absolutely zero biological memory of the heavy winter months, generating a terrifying multiversal dissonance inside the fragile mind. The human soul mathematically realizes it is violently bleeding out its own finite existence into the silent, dark gray geometric ether, permanently disconnected from the heavy, continuous flow of natural biological time.
The synchronization failure, the heavy mathematical precision required for a global biological stasis, introduces a terrifying physiological variable, the geometric synchronization failure. What mathematically happens when a fragile human biological environment violently rejects the 90-day algorithm and wakes up 2 months early? The terrifying reality is absolute, suffocating multiversal isolation. The lonely host violently opens their simple dot eyes to find a completely dead, stark geometric world. Billions of other humans are mathematically locked in a deep, unyielding biological coma. The isolated stickman cannot aggressively wake them. The stasis protocol is mathematically absolute. The lonely human vessel is violently forced to wander the frozen, heavy, dark gray geometric cities entirely alone, mathematically trapped in a chilling, silent purgatory. The absolute psychological weight of this heavy geometric isolation violently drives the fragile mind into aggressive multiversal madness long before the rest of the biological human species is mathematically scheduled to open their eyes.
The agonizing, terrifying physiological horror mathematically executes the exact moment the 90-day hibernation violently ends. Waking up is not a gentle biological sunrise. It is a heavy, catastrophic neurological reboot. The chilled, stagnant, heavy blood is violently forced to aggressively pump through the atrophied pink biological veins. Billions of delicate nerve endings simultaneously mathematically fire, aggressively flooding the fragile human brain with absolute, blinding geometric agony. The lungs violently gasp for the stark white air, aggressively stretching atrophied tissue to its absolute tearing point. The human host mathematically writhes on the pure white geometric floor, screaming in chilling silence as the biological engine violently, forcefully reignites its heavy kinetic friction. This agonizing, mathematically precise biological torture becomes a mandatory, inescapable geometric penalty, aggressively proving that the fragile human architecture was never mathematically designed to survive the terrifying, heavy physics of absolute multiversal stasis.